Hey nerds, welcome to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies. I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd. So this week on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it seemed like another episode where not too much of plot development was going to happen. We had a lot of conflict that had been building up for, the last couple weeks, finally coming to a head. But a few things were dropped that really kind of call out to past MCU events, but also open up a much bigger picture for what's going to go forward and what could happen. So we got to start off with going back in time to Season 2 of Agent Carter and the reference to Isodyne and Dark Force or 0 Point Energy, things like that. If you didn't watch Agent Carter, you missed out on a great show, and it's unfortunate that it's not on the air anymore, but Season 2 had a lot of stuff that has parallels between what we're seeing here, between theoretically what's going to be in Doctor Strange. I don't know, haven't seen it yet, but it's important to understand what is going on there. So first thing to talk about is Isodyne Energy. Isodyne Energy was a technology company in the 1940s that was dedicated to finding new types of energy and fuel. It didn't last long, and it was defunct in the mid-1950s and then was purchased by the Roxxon Corporation. Now, the Roxxon Corporation in the comics, they're basically a big, bad, evil industrial complex. They do everything. At one point, they were taken over secretly by the Red Skull. They've got a nasty history, and they also have a history in the MCU. They appeared in Season 1 and 2 of Agent Carter. There was a Roxxon oil tanker in Iron Man 3. They've kind of been all over the place. If you've been looking or paying attention, they appear all the time. So that's what Isodyne Energy was. And most notably, they were the secret scientist behind it all is the person we got to talk about next, which is Whitney Frost. Now, Whitney Frost is better known as Madame Mask. She is a villain who traditionally was associated with Iron Man, but was the main villain of Agent Carter Season 2. During Season 2, she was infected with the Dark Force and became obsessed with it. She wanted to do everything she could to get more because she learned how to control it and use it. And through, other experiments and an atomic bomb explosion, she was able to get more, and she was hearing voices coming from the Dark Force. There was some entity that is either connected to her through the Dark Force or from the Dark Force dimension that was talking to her and giving her commands. Now, there's a lot of speculations on who this could have been. Blackheart, Mephisto, there's a ton of different things. Some of the Elder Gods, but it was never actually confirmed. But this does tie in with the Darkhold and the Dark Force. They're linked. So that's, if you haven't seen Agent Carter Season 2, it really would probably benefit you to go back and check that out. But Whitney, Madame Mask, was heavily involved in it, and through her connection to it, we know that there is some being in the realm that the Darkhold is essentially bringing things from that wants to get onto this side of the dimensional border, because that's ultimately what it was trying to get Whitney to do, was to open a larger portal so that it could come through. Now, the next thing to talk about, Eli Morrow. This week, we learned a lot more about him. He's not the nice guy that his nephews think he is. We learned his relationship with the project leader, Joe. We learned what the entire project was about. So starting there, the entire scientific project was about creating matter, which is impossible. I mean, Eli says it in the episode. This is breaking the laws of thermodynamics. But that's what the Darkhold was communicating them and trying to get them to do. Now, the entire episode, Eli is allegedly giving us this story that he was just trying to stop them, to get the book away from them so they wouldn't do this because too many lives were at risk. Especially once Joe, the project leader, changed the dynamics of the experiment in order to give him the power to create matter. Now, I see this as a parallel between what was happening with Whitney in Season 2 of Agent Carter and what Joe was trying to accomplish. Obviously, that experiment failed. This is why Eli put Joe in a coma from trying to beat him, because he wanted the location of the book. And we also learned that Eli is the one who put everyone associated with the project in those containment boxes. So Eli is not the good guy. He is a little different from who he is in the comic. He's not the Satan-worshipping serial killer, but this is not far off. He's clearly been possessed in some way by the book, and he murdered or got as close to murdering a bunch of people as he thought he could. So that's all the backstory on the experiment. We also learned that Joe had put a hit out on Eli. He wanted to stop him. He thought Eli was sticking his nose into things that he didn't want him learning about. He didn't want him asking about the book, so he hired that team, the Fifth Street Locos, to do a drive-by and take him out. And Robbie and his brother were just in the wrong place, the wrong time, kind of a case of mistaken identity, because those guys were just going after the people in the car, which they thought was Eli. Now, that whole scene builds up to then also us getting the backstory on Robbie. Robbie and his brother are having this discussion about what really happened that night, and we learn about the Good Samaritan. And this is the story that Gabe has been talking about, that someone on a motorcycle showed up and saved them both. Well, that is just the version of the story that he's been led to believe, because what really happened, what Robbie really saw, was he made a deal with somebody, and Johnny Blaze, the ghostwriter, shows up. In the version of the story that we hear from Robbie, he's saved or brought back to life, because he does say he was dead. He was brought back to life by Johnny Blaze, or whatever power imbued the ghostwriter into him. So this is a big difference from the comic, whereas in the comic he's possessed by the evil spirit of his uncle. In the show, he is now officially a ghostwriter. And that's a huge difference. And honestly, that's a difference I prefer. I like it that Robbie is a legitimate ghostwriter and not having to deal with this evil possession thing. So Johnny Blaze, the first ghostwriter that most people are aware of, there is the Phantom Rider, the cowboy one, but the ghostwriter who started it all for the most part is now in the MCU. And this is huge. We don't know if we're going to see him again. We don't know if he's going to be getting his own show. This, again, does play into my theory that we are going to be getting some sort of darker television show like the Midnight Suns, where Ghost Rider, Blade, Morbius, maybe two Ghost Riders, because we've got Robbie and Johnny now. I don't know. It would be a nice twist, since they are building up this kind of more supernatural side on the TV universe. But that takes us to the last thing this week. Where is Simmons? Simmons is MIA for most of the episode, and despite the irony of her boss saying a team that trusts as he's putting on the hood, we still don't know where she is. Now, the best bet is that she has been sent to go help Senator Nadir. If you remember, she was blackmailing the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., Mace, at the end of last week, and it seems likely, and it seems the most obvious answer, that she demanded all the research, all the science, and the best person in S.H.I.E.L.D. to come help take care of her brother, to heal him, to fix him, to turn him normal again, to bring him out of that cocoon. Now, the issue is he actually dead, like we saw happen to Trip, where he got essentially cocooned, solidified, but then shattered? Or is he still in an inhuman cocoon and just hasn't emerged as whoever he will be? Hard to say. I'm assuming he actually just hasn't emerged as his powers, because no one since the Terrigen crystals fell into the ocean has had that same kind of reaction. I think we would have been hearing about that if people were going through Terrigenesis and dying. I think there'd be a bigger panic than what we're actually seeing. So that's where I think Simmons is, and I think that is most likely based on what we know with the show. Now, the last thing. S.H.I.E.L.D. will not be back next week, so that means I won't be back next week. We're taking a break, especially with that cliffhanger where we've got Eli now is exhibiting powers, and is it actually him, or does he have, is he possessed by something? Is it just his body? Is some darker entity absorbing him? I'm not sure. I'm going to leave that open. I'm not going to speculate on that yet. I have some ideas, but I want to hear your ideas. Leave your comments below, and we can talk about this, because we've got a lot of time. S.H.I.E.L.D. is not back until November 29th. So, guys, until then, make sure you're checking out my other shows. I have a Theory and Conspiracies video for Supergirl and Flash. I've got the weekly podcast. And if you want to stay up to date on everything I'm doing, make sure and hit that subscribe button, and make sure to follow me on Twitter, @GoodNerdBadNerd. So, until next week, until November 29th, I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd, and this has been Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies.